Welcome to my podcast story, the show where podcasters share the real journey behind their voices, from their first mic check to their biggest milestones. Every episode reveals the lessons, challenges, and breakthrough that shape a podcast star's journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I can't wait for you to hear today's story. Takilla Combs is a life organizing strategist and professional organizer who helps high-performing individuals turn chaos into clarity through simple, sustainable systems. As the founder of Extreme Audacity Organized Solutions and the host of The Organized Life, she teaches that organization isn't about perfect spaces. It's about building structures that support how you actually live, work, and live. Welcome to the podcast, Takilla.
Thank you so much for having me.
The name of your podcast is called The Organized Life. What was the inspiration behind?
So, as you just said, I'm a professional organizer. So, I help people to rid their lives of clutter and chaos. And so, I've been doing that basically all my life. And about 9 years ago, I realized that I could do it as a profession. And so, I started helping people to get decluttered and get organized as a profession and as a career. And over the years, I realized that it's more than just getting your physical space organized. It's about creating the organized life. If you want to stay organized, you have to put structures and systems in place in order for you to stay organized. You can't just get the pretty pantry, the pretty closets, and the bins and think that you're going to stay organized. So, what I started doing was coaching people on how to stay organized. The more I talk to people about how to maintain organization and create the organized life, the more questions I got. And so then I had so many people asking me, do you have a podcast? Do you have a podcast? And I was like, no. And so then I was like, I'm going to start a podcast. It took me a couple of years to do it, but that's how my podcast got started.
You mentioned it took you a couple of years. I'm curious, why did it take that long?
Because I was in my own head. I was in my own way. I was afraid of what I would sound like on the podcast, if I would be articulate enough, if I would be, stumbling over my words too much. Would people want to listen? Do I have enough to talk about? So all of these mental blocks were in my way. Nothing else standing in my way except for myself.
So, what was the different thing that happened for the podcast to eventually come to be?
What did you say?
For a couple of years, you had this idea that you wanted to start a podcast, but you did not, right? So I'm curious, what happened? What was the different thing that happened? I guess, yeah, okay, yeah, now it's time. I'm just going to start it.
No, I got you. Yeah. So what actually caused me to say yes and start the podcast? So it was a couple of things. I started doing my coaching virtually. And then I had an accountability partner, and I was like, I want to start this podcast. And she was like, okay, bet I'm going to hold you accountable. When do you want to start it? And so she held me accountable. I gave her timelines on like when I was going to have certain things done. And she just held me accountable. And that's how it got started. So literally having an accountability partner, somebody that actually loves you and wants to see you succeed is so awesome. And one of the best things that I could do is having an accountability partner, somebody to hold me accountable.
This accountability partner you're talking about, did you have the accountability partner before you started the podcast, or was it, I need an accountability partner to start the...
No, I didn't have an accountability partner, and I didn't know I needed an accountability partner for the particular podcast. I was just talking to her about starting the podcast, and she said, okay, you're going to start a podcast. When do you want to start it? Let me know. I'll hold you accountable. I'll check in with you. So it was her that actually set up the accountability, that she saw I really needed to do this and wanted to do it, and she was willing to hold me accountable to it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of persons actually thought a question of how to do it is a question of someone to hold them responsible.
Yeah, it's I've learned that over the years, in no matter what I'm doing, what business venture I'm doing, no matter if I'm trying to lose weight or whatever I'm trying to accomplish, having somebody to hold me accountable is so important and definitely benefits my life. I can, everything that I've done that has had success has had somebody hold me accountable, even if it was my business coach or if it was a friend like the one I was just telling you about, or if it was a family member saying, you said you want to do something, so now let's do it. So having an accountability partner is been very instrumental in my life.
The name of your podcast is clearly defined. The podcast about like what's the transformation, what's the change you see you hope to create in the life of listeners?
Yeah. So when we think about the organized life, you have to think past the pretty bins and the Pinterest pretty stuff and the reels you see on TikTok and the reels you see on Instagram. And you have to look beyond that. And then we look at, what does your calendar look like? What is your schedule looking like? Are you overbooking yourself? Are you saying yes to the right things? Are you saying no to the wrong things? How are you getting up in the morning? How are you preparing for bed? Are you getting the children involved in the process of their own life so that they can be more responsible and help you out so that you won't be burnt out and have decision fatigue, but allow your children to start getting involved in the process. So it's more than just about getting your physical space organized. Yes, that's very important, but the bottom line is that if you don't have your calendar organized, if you don't have your schedule organized, if you are just willy nilly out here with your life, you're gonna never be able to maintain the organization that you're trying to create in your physical space. You're not gonna be able to maintain it if your life and your schedule is not organized.
Just 2 to 3 months you started the podcast. What were some of the challenges you had early on? Because I noticed you started the podcast last year, I think
Yeah.
around June. Yeah.
Yeah. So the biggest thing, so luckily I have a platform where that I use my coach. I have a business coach, and she has a platform that helps us to walk through the process of everything that we want to do. So, um, the one of the campaigns called "Start Your Own Podcast," and so I basically walk through all of those steps that would help me to start my own podcast. So when it got down to it, the biggest challenge was still me, myself, and I. Me being in my head, me making sure that it just actually did the thing, which is starting my podcast. So when I got closer to it, I was still nervous. I had the scripts. I had, done all the things, making sure that I knew what I was going to talk about. I had my 10 first episodes lined up, what I was going to talk about, all those things. And then it was like, okay, I got to hit record and actually do it. So that was the scariest part about starting my own podcast. And I did a lot of stumbling over my words. I did a lot of re-recording, clipping, all of those things. And the bottom line was I actually just did it. So I was able to do the editing and stuff, and the more I did it, the easier it became for me.
I noticed that, yeah, your podcast is the organized life. It's about organizing. That's like the one word explanation of what the podcast. And I
Yes.
feel like that's a superpower that helps to create the podcast itself. So what I mean is, how do you organize the making of your podcast? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Um, so like I said, I used this what's called the campaign, and it actually laid everything out that I needed to do in order to launch my podcast. So I was very blessed in that. But how I maintain it is making sure my calendar and my schedule is on point, making sure my guests know like what's happening, what's coming up. They're getting their calendar invites. They got the link to the call. So making sure that I have things in place structured, like what day I'm going to prepare for the podcast that's coming up, what to record, what day I'm going to prepare for the pre-interviews, what day I'm going to prepare for editing, what day, all of those things are in my calendar. It's a lot, but if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist and it's not going to happen, or I'm going to have decision fatigue
Yes.
and uh, have a hard time getting all the things done because it's a lot of work that has to go into, as you know, doing a podcast.
Um, Quick break. Before we continue, I'd love to invite you to join the My Podcast Story newsletter. Each week, I share highlights from our guest stories, behind the scenes podcasting tips, and resources to help you grow your own show. You can sign up at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. Now, let's get back to the episode. I guess we should step into the behind the scenes of the podcast episode. The last episode you published, can you walk me through the cycle from tools,
So
the
I
apps,
think, what'd you say?
that including the tools and the apps you use?
Okay. So we're going deep. Okay. So you about Podmatch. So I think the last interview was a Podmatch interview. The interview that's being dropped tomorrow is actually somebody that I actually know. She's also a professional organizer, so I didn't use Podmatch for her, but I have been using Podmatch, which is how you and I connected. So I used Podmatch. Then, of course, inside of there, you connect with potential people that you want to have on your podcast. So I connected with I'm not sure exactly who the last guest was. I think it was Glenn, but I connected with him on the last I connected with him probably about a month or two ago. We did a pre-interview. He and I hit it off so quickly. We had so much fun in the pre-interview. I was like, yes, we gotta record this podcast. So I use Calendly to schedule my podcast, which the link is inside of Podmatch. Once they schedule on Calendly, it actually sends them a Zoom link and the Zoom invite, which also inside of it, I have notifications for a day before, a couple of days before. So I have the notification reminders inside of those. So each guest gets a reminder. And then inside of that, I create I use a app called monday.com. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, to help me manage all of my tasks. Each guest, I have like 5 steps that I have to do. I have to create the interview questions, and I don't put them inside of monday.com until I've approved them as a guest. So once they get approved through our pre-interview, then they go into monday.com. I have to create the pre-interview questions. Then I have to record the podcast. Then I have to edit the podcast. Then I have to write the description for the podcast and the title. Then I upload it into Buzzsprout and YouTube. And then I think that's it. I launch it. And then I do all the social. I use Canva. Well, I use iMovie to do my editing. It's a Apple product inside of MacBooks. So I use iMovie to edit my products. I use Canva to create the content for social media. And then on Monday, my first sneak peek drops on Monday. My podcast drops on Tuesday. And then on Thursday or Friday, I have, in case you missed it, basically like another peek into the podcast. So, adding the links in there so that if they missed the podcast, they haven't seen it, we're going to put it back out there for them to go ahead and try to catch it again.
I didn't expect anything less than this. Like, oh, I was speaking to the organizing
That's right.
podcast. So I was supposed to see some organization. If you had given me something else, I would have been disappointed. You met my expectations.
I'm glad.
I'm curious, your podcast is going on to 1 year. What have you been doing to grow the podcast?
Ooh, so pushing it through all the social media platforms. And recently, I think it was in November, I got on Podmatch, was has been very instrumental in my growth, and I really am enjoying being on Podmatch. But having different guests on from even before Podmatch, I had guests on my platform. So digging into their communities has been instrumental in my podcast. Sending it out to the people in my mailing list, and on social media. Those have been the means of growing my podcast: my email list, social media, and Podmatch.
You mentioned the email list. How big is the email list?
I think I'm at like 1,200 or 1,500, somewhere around there.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, so it's I mean, it's 9 years in the making. So I mean, it's all relative because some people have 30,000 people in their mailing list, right? Some people only have 5. So, I'm way somewhere in the middle. I think it's about 12 or 1,300, maybe 1,500. I've had a lot of people unsubscribe, which is okay.
Yeah.
But so somewhere around there.
Wow, that's an ecosystem. It's no longer a podcast. There's the newsletter, there's the social platform, and it's like it's just everything. The newsletter feeds the podcast feeds the newsletter, and everything is just working hand in hand.
Yeah, it's definitely a system in the making. So I'm always trying to figure out what I could do better, how I can grow. Definitely being on other people's platforms, like here on yours, is a way for growth. And so I've done more having people on my podcast than I've been on podcasts.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to kind of reverse that and be on more podcasts so that I can grow my audience also.
If you had to pick just one growth method of all the things you mentioned, you had to pick just one. Which would you pick and why?
You said if I had to pick one what? One growth method? That's hard because I feel like you need all of them. Like, you can't really use just one method. I think that's being unrealistic, and you'll sell yourself short if you try to use one method. I don't think I could just use Podmatch, because even if I use Podmatch, okay, well, where I'm going to put the stuff, right? Where I'm going to put the podcast, I got to put it on YouTube. That's considered social media. You can't just use social media because you maybe need more people to connect with. So I don't know if I can answer that with wisdom. Wisdom. I don't think I can do that.
I see what you did there. Oh wow. Okay. So what are some of the things in terms of growth that are like in your to-do list? They're like, okay, I'm going to do them in the future, but right now let me just do this. But in the future, I'll do this and I'll do that. I'd love to know some of your plans.
Um, I really want to be a keynote speaker. I want to start speaking more on stages. Not just on virtual stages, but on physical stages, speaking to people about creating the organized life and how to maintain the organization that which they wish to create. So I wish to do more speaking. I wish to write a book. I have wrote a workbook. I've wrote a couple of workbooks. One I have already dropped. One I am in the process of dropping, should be done in the next month or so. And then I wish to actually write my book called The Organized Life.
Thank you for sharing those goals. The reason I ask these questions is in a year from now, I love to, when I invite you back on the podcast, I'm like, oh yeah, it's like Takilla. You said you were going to do this. How is it going? What happened? Give me the gist. And it's the conversation. There's a question I always like to ask every podcaster. And yeah, I'm smiling because the question kind of excites me. Does the podcast make money?
Yeah. What was the question?
Podcast make money?
Oh, yeah, that excites you, huh? So it's made me a little money, and I guess that's all relative too. Not enough for me to stop working. Okay, not enough for me to stop doing some other things. but it has made me a little bit of money. And I think in the near future, in a year when I come back, I think I'll be making a lot of money because I'll be in almost 2 years at that point.
Oh, when I know you might not be able to go into the numbers, but how, how are you making this money? The
Um,
products.
so Pod Match, I've made money off of Pod Match. And then getting new leads from clients, right? Getting new people in my mailing list that want to sign up for my coaching program, my virtual organizing. So that's basically how I've been getting income from having the podcast.
So you use the podcast to get leads for your offers, and then you also get paid from Podmatch. And you said 2 years. That's quite a specific timeline. Why 2 years?
Well, I was just saying that if you have me back next year, it'll be 2 years. And so by then I will be making more money. So I'm just speaking it into existence.
Yeah, yeah. I would love to see that. I'd love to see that. That would be nice. That would be fantastic. Okay,
Yeah.
you started the podcast, you build the podcast. Knowing what you know now, what do you what do you wish you could have done differently before you started the podcast?
You said, what do I
Knowing what you know now, what do you wish you could have done differently when you started the podcast?
when I started the podcast, what would I have done differently? I would have started sooner. I would have started sooner. I That's probably the biggest thing. I think thus far everything has been going super smooth. I have loved every minute of it. I have no complaints up until this point, Wisdom. It's been great. I should have started a long time ago. That's probably my only regret is not starting sooner.
Have you gotten messages from listeners, comments or feedback?
Yeah, so I get feedback inside the comments, mostly on YouTube. But I also get feedback inside of social media on the social media pages. I also have gotten texts from friends
So
and family about the podcast. Like, oh my gosh, this podcast is amazing. I haven't even finished it, but I just want to let you know that I love listening to this podcast, and they would tell me which they were listening to. So, yeah, I've been getting good like, feedback.
earlier on, I did ask you, curious, do you plan to relaunch your podcast or like make some big changes? Or are you going to keep just doing what's already working?
Nope. I don't plan on making any big changes to my podcast. I am going to rebrand my business to the organized life instead of extreme audacity. So I'm in the process of doing that because the organized life, I started it with the podcast and it is just taking off. The name is really standing out, and I'm going to rebrand my business and relaunch it in about a year as the Organized Life.
So you rebranded your business as the name of the podcast. Oh, usually that's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we could say the podcast helps you refine the name of your business.
Yeah.
Maybe thanks to the podcast. Really, really. As someone who's been doing the podcast for a year ish, kind of. What advice would you give? Because the thing is, if I wasn't interviewing someone who's been doing the podcast for 5 years and I asked them for advice, people would say, "Oh, they've been doing this for 5 years. They don't really understand what it means to start as a beginner." For you, it's less than a year. So yeah, I mean, you're still in your trenches. So what advice would you give to someone who's thinking of starting a podcast?
Um, I know you're nervous. I know you're afraid. I know you're self-conscious, but just do it. Just do it. You're gonna fumble, you're gonna stumble, you're gonna mess up. That's okay. If you go back to look at some of your favorite people who you love to listen to, go back to listen to their very first podcast, their very first 10 episodes, you're gonna see that they weren't that good. Okay, so go ahead and start. Be okay with not being that good. You will get better over time.
Thank you so much for that advice. You can listeners listen to your podcast? And what's the name of the podcast or what the podcast is about?
So my podcast is called the Organized Life Podcast. You can find us on all the podcast platforms as the Organized Life with Takilla Renee. And definitely check me out on YouTube if you want to see me in action because I'm super silly. If you may not have noticed a little bit on here, I like to have fun. And that's what I do on my podcast. So check us out on YouTube or check us out on just all the different podcast platforms at The Organized Life with Priscilla Renee.
To me and also for sharing your podcast goals. I can't wait for a year from now for us to look back and say, what was it? Those were some good old days. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, yeah, awesome.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I hope you enjoyed listening to this journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And don't forget to join the newsletter at mypodcaststory.com/join for more stories and podcasting insights. Until next time, keep telling your story because someone out there needs to hear it.